Hello and welcome to the podcast brought to you by the National Cyber and AI Awards, the Unrecognised Heroes podcast. And this is where we dive into the latest innovations, challenges, and success stories in the world of cybersecurity. I'm your host for this podcast. My name's Ellie, and today I'm joined by Dr. Clare Johnson. Clare, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ellie. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. I'm so excited to interview you today. So let's start with a little bit about you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the industry, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the capability lead for an IT consultancy firm called Ipsos Consulting. That's my day job. And then I also founded and direct a network called Women in Cyber Unlimited, which has been running since about 2018. So getting into cyber was completely by accident, which I think a lot of people often say. I actually had a bit of a love of tech as a child, but I also had a love of music, and so sort of messed around with both of those together, and then went to university and decided that I would do music with a little bit of computing on the side. And after the first year, I enjoyed the computing, but it was much more difficult than the music. So I stuck with the music, and then got into computing again after I left my degree. Went in my first job actually.
That's really interesting. That's not your kind of linear career path, is it? You
No.
talk to some people and they go down the traditional computer science route, but that's really nice. You've got that creative edge as well as your techiness.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of your career path, Claire, I know that you've gone on to do a number of different things, and one of them you've mentioned being Women in Cyber Wales. Was there a moment that kind of sparked your curiosity to starting that, or was there a defining moment in your career that you thought, I've got to set this up and make it real?
Um, yeah, it was. I think it was a bit of both, really. So once I started teaching cybersecurity, after I did my degree, I worked actually for a charity for a little while, but as a sideline, I was doing IT training, and eventually I got into teaching IT in further education college and then in a university. When I was in the university, I picked up a sort of a more senior role leading the teaching team at the university, and so when I was there, I was engaging in a lot more external activities.
Right.
And it was really there that I could see that there was that lack of gender diversity in the sector. And it really surprised me because it was the first time I'd really noticed it. I mean, teaching IT in an FE college was typically all boys, but even there I didn't really notice it in the same way. So once I realised, and I was attending Cyber Wales ecosystem meetings quite frequently, and that's a really sort of thriving ecosystem in Wales.
Yeah.
I actually spoke to the guys that run that and said, how would you feel if I set up a women's version of this just to see if there's any interest in it? And they were really supportive. So that's what I did, and I didn't really expect it to kind of succeed in the way that it has. But I think that demonstrates that there is definitely an appetite for that sort of network for women.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can correct me, I'm sure you're very well versed on the stats, but is it 15% of women that work in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think the last DCIT report from last year was 17%, and that's sort of, I mean, it's been 17% for quite a while. There was a small blip where it increased, I think, in 2021, which was really promising because you sort of think, oh, great, things are changing, but then it went back to 17. And then as you get into leadership roles, it's even lower.
Do you think that is, Claire? Do you have a kind of set of reasons that you think that there's so little women in the industry, or what's your thoughts around it?
I think it's a really, really complex problem. And, I've talked to lots of people about it and, made my own observations as well. I think one of the biggest challenges is that cultural thing that's been going on for a very long time. It's traditionally been a very male dominated sector, apart from if you look right back into the sort of the war time when Bletchley Park was run mostly by women. But I think since then it's been very male dominated, and so that's a very difficult ship to turn. It's a big problem, and even in education, often the activities are quite male centric in terms of I mean, I can remember doing when I was doing sort of my first year computing with my music degree, is that we had to do a piece of work around cars, which was fine, but that kind of sets the tone. It's like, okay, this is car parking. That sort of problems aren't focusing on what perhaps women might find more interesting.
Absolutely. I think a lot of these conversations I have with people, it seems like it's more of a wider society problem rather than just an industry focused problem. But of course, that leads then into other industries as well. And I'm sure there's other industries apart from cybersecurity that have that gender um, discourse, I
Yeah,
suppose. So
I mean, it's a familiar sight across all of tech, really. But engineering often has similar issues. And, of course, it works the other way around as well. Teaching is typically female dominated. So, um, there's issues in lots of different places. But of course, I notice it most in cyber because that's the area that I work in.
do you think there's specific challenges that women face in terms of entering the industry, Claire?
Yes, I think it's that visibility of role models is one of the challenges. And I often hear people say, "Oh, you can't be what you can't see." I kind of have a take on that because I actually think, if you can't see it, then you should be it yourself. But that's not everybody's cup of tea. I appreciate that. But yeah, so coming into the sector, it can look like a scary place to be. And there's that. I think there's some typical gender differences in the way that men and women approach things, and that can have a negative effect for women because it can feel quite daunting, I guess. One of the things that I've done through the Women in Cyber Network is I run a conference. I've run it for 2 years now, and as part of that conference, at the end, we bring in the CyberFirst girls finalists. So these are year 8 girls. We bring in 40 girls and their teachers into a conference that is about cybersecurity, but is a room full of mostly women. And the reason for doing that is to try and demonstrate to those girls that they are welcome in this space, and that it isn't as male dominated as it might seem. There are lots and lots of really, really talented women working in the sector.
I love that. And that's such a nice message to put out, isn't it? You can sort of imagine the mind of a year 8 girl thinking, there's hundreds of women here. I feel inspired. I
Yeah.
feel, I belong here. I
Yes.
think that's probably really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. They seem to enjoy it, so that's a good sign.
Absolutely. What do you think, on the whole, can be done to support greater inclusion and diversity more broadly, I suppose, into the cybersecurity sector then?
So for me, this is an everybody problem. It's not just one person's challenge, and it's tempting to sometimes to say, well, it's education's fault because they're not inspiring girls when they're in school, and then universities will say it's school's fault. Schools will say it's a government issue because there's not enough in the curriculum to inspire girls into the sector. Government might say it's industry's problem because they're not advertising the roles in the right way. So, excuse me. So I think it's a bit of everything.
Sure.
And I think everybody has a responsibility to do whatever it is that they can do in their space. So if you're, a man working in the sector and you're looking around your team and you're thinking, do you know what, we don't have a very diverse team here, then try and do something about it. That's your gift, that's within your gift to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's one solution. I think it needs to be a very sort of holistic approach to trying to improve it.
That's really interesting. And again, you touched on education, and I just have this conversation with people quite regularly and thinking, I was in school perhaps 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, and I don't ever recall cybersecurity or a career in tech being a career option that's kind of, thrust upon you as more traditional routes were in going into teaching or the police force. But it's interesting how that looks to evolve. And I talk to young people now, and that is more of a viable career option, and maybe more broadly technology, but they might move into cybersecurity or, as you say, kind of fall into it naturally. And that's how I fell into it, was just through my background in marketing and working for the professional body for cyber, and fell in love with the industry and the passion for it. And I think naturally people do fall into it, but it's nice to have that promoted as a traditional career route, especially with the way the world's kind of moving and evolving. I'm sure it will become more of a viable career route in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. And the UK Cybersecurity Council are doing a lot of work in this space, in trying to sort of formalise the professional routes into the sector. So that's a really positive step. And if you think of you've talked about some of those sort of the teaching and the police professions, which are very clearly defined. You kind of there's known routes into those roles, I suppose. And I think because cyber is quite a new career, relatively new, those roles haven't been defined as clearly. But it's
Absolutely.
coming. I think it's coming. So yeah, it is exciting times.
It's nice as well, I think, that the council are doing that work. I spoke to them actually earlier this week about their associate membership, and it almost gives that entry point, doesn't it, to say, okay, these are some of the really visible career pathways that you can take, and where to go next with your career, because they're not always that clear.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And they've kind of defined the roles that are within the sector. And then as you say, that associate level is great because it gets you into that pathway at the earliest opportunity, and then of course you'll be exposed to all the events and information that they will share with you as you sort of progress through your career. So yeah, it's really good. I sort of have high hopes that in the future we'll have much more clearly defined paths, and that when careers officers are going into schools and talking to children, that they're saying, you could become a lawyer or a doctor or a policeman or a cybersecurity specialist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, lots of opportunities there.
Claire, you touched on your work with CyberFirst and the role you played in that. I suppose you know so much about the CyberFirst program and the initiatives, but for those that aren't perhaps aware in the audience, could you talk a little bit around that and what the aims are of the CyberFirst program?
Yeah, so CyberFirst is an initiative that's run from the National Cybersecurity Centre, supported by UK government. It's designed to inspire young people to consider careers in the sector and also support them in that journey. So they run lots of activities. They used to run summer camps for children of all ages. And then they offer a bursary award for students at university as well. So really giving lots of sort of wraparound support that extends what the curriculum can offer. And I think it's been going since about 2016-17, and I think I got involved with it very early doors, about 2017-18. So yeah, so I've seen it kind of grow and evolve, and I've aimed to be involved with it as much as I can. And when I left, so I left the university 2.5 years ago to join the commercial sector. And I was really worried that it would be difficult for me to continue engaging with the programme, but I'm glad to say that's I have been able to continue, and we support a local secondary school, but also I sort of get involved in lots of their events, which is great.
Oh, that's wonderful. And again, it's that inspiring place, isn't it, to say this could be your future if you want it, and there's a career for you in cybersecurity. If you could give any advice to young people that are entering or thinking about entering the sector, what would you give to them, Claire? What would you say are the best routes forward?
So I think the most important thing is to surround yourself with people who are supportive, because there will be challenges getting into the sector because it's not as clearly defined as some other roles. Some people sort of view it with a sense of secrecy, or you're going to be doing sort of illegal things or hacking things or breaking things. So get people around you who work in the sector who you can talk to. Do lots of stuff in your own time as well. There's nothing as sort of inspiring as seeing a young person who said, well, I thought I don't know, digital forensics was really interesting. So actually, I went off and did a course on digital forensics online, or I watched a load of YouTube videos by somebody who's really into digital forensics. Because that really sort of demonstrates then that you do have that interest and that you're willing to do that extra learning because you're not getting it in school. So you kind of have to find your own routes to learn about the sector. And yeah, I mean, I would just, I know it's a bit sort of cliche to say, but go for it because it's just such a brilliant career to join. So many opportunities across such a broad spectrum of different roles that all, there's the sort of the protection side, the detection side, there's the communications, there's the really technical stuff, and then there's, the sort of strategic management and risk management. So there's really something for everybody. And yeah, if you like learning and you like problem solving, it's perfect, I think.
I do like that. And definitely, there's so much to learn in the industry, and there's so many great free industry events that people
Yes.
can get themselves along to and just absorb. Listen to some great talks. And I've found from my experience in the sector anyway, to be people want to help. People genuinely want to support and help and give advice where they can. And that's what I've always really, really loved about this industry is that there's so many great people in there that want to help and support you. So that would be.
Yeah, definitely. And some of you sort of mentioned some of the free events. So there's lots of big expos and things that you can get into, but also just a shout out for B-sides because that is a fantastic community focused event. It's completely not corporate, so it's not got that kind of corporate feel to it that you get at a lot of conferences. But what you do get is people who are really, really passionate about what they do, and who really know what they're talking about. And it's a great way to make connections. So it's a good fun day, and has like often has lots of social elements around it as well. But yeah, you will just learn from the best people in the industry, really, in a very informal way. It's a really great thing to do, and they're very very cheap to attend. So
That's great, isn't it, to have something on offer like that? And just touching on events, that gives me a nice segue into the next part of our conversation, Claire. But the National Cyber Awards 2024, where you were winner of multiple awards and took home the trophy. What
it's
did
there on
that?
the shelf.
There we go. Oh, I'm glad to see that. That's excellent. What did that recognition feel like for you, Claire? And has that supported you personally, professionally, and yeah, talk to me a little bit about how that felt.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. It was quite emotional, really, because again, it was one of those things that I've sort of seen from the outset when they first started.
Yeah,
And we entered as a university for the very first awards and won that, so that was brilliant. But of course, that was very much a team effort. That's the whole university kind of going in for it. So to win an award, sort of on the merits of what I've been doing it was brilliant. Really a real privilege to be there. I mean, it's a great event because it's you sort of see lots of people, meet new people, and it's a very sort of uplifting event, I would say. So yeah, when they called out my name, it was a bit like, but yeah, really, really rewarding. Of course, one of the things when you do like lots of additional work in terms of above and beyond what you're paid to do, I suppose,
yeah.
is you often have those moments. I'm sure everybody does. Do you think people really want me to be doing this? Is this really valuable? Lots of people say to me, "Oh, love your meetings and a great webinar or whatever it is that we've done." But to have the award, sort of that external verification that people have valued it was really really nice. So yeah, a great feeling.
I'm pleased to hear that. That's great. And have the awards helped you forge any new relationships, partnerships, or opened any doors for you in the industry, Claire?
Yeah, so I suppose what sort of happened afterwards is I had a flurry of like new invites on LinkedIn to connect with people. And then I seemed to have a sort of endless stream of opportunities to speak at events and things, which was brilliant because, one of the things I really like about, when you do join a panel or you sort of speak to a group of people, is it gives an opportunity for you to talk about the highlights of working in the sector really. And you can probably tell I like working in the sector, so I like sharing that with other people, and to inspire anybody else to sort of think about coming and working in cyber is something it's great to have the opportunity to do.
Excellent. What's next for you, Claire? Are there any exciting projects, initiatives that you're currently working on, or any details you can share with us?
Well, I'm running the networking breakfast at Cyber UK again. So that's the National Cybersecurity Centre's flagship conference, which runs every year. And that's a real highlight of the year for me. When they came to Wales a few years ago, I was running a Women in Cyber meeting. I just happened to be hosting a visit to one of the schools in the area from some representatives from the NCSC. And I said to one of them, "Oh, do you think, I might be able to run a Women in Cyber meeting at Cyber UK, just like as a fringe event?" And I really didn't think they would say yes. But I thought, if you don't ask, you don't get. And to my amazement, they did. And it wasn't long before the event, it's like about 4 or 5 weeks before the event actually took place. And of course, I'm sure you're aware, because of the stuff that you do, that the planning that goes into these events is enormous. So it was very, very last minute from their perspective, and it was like a big sort of flurry to get some narrative out about what the event was and where it would actually be hosted. But yeah, they let me run it there, and I honestly didn't think people would attend, because it was at 8 o'clock on day two. It was absolutely chucking it down with rain. I thought everybody's going to have been out the night before having a good time, because that's day one of the conference. And then I stood there with Kira Mitchell, who was from the Scottish network at the time. And I said, "Oh, nobody's going to come. We're going to have to eat all these pastries on our own." And people just came and kept coming. And it was really quite amazing. So they've let me run it ever since, which has been brilliant. And I keep waiting for them to say, "We're going to get someone else to do it this year." But so far, so good.
Well, that's
So
great.
yeah, but yeah, that's the real highlight. And the other thing that I've been working on, which has been really rewarding, is I've been doing some work with Cardiff University. Um, they've had some students who've been funded by Cardiff Capital Region, which is a sort of regional government fund, and it's been to enable 5 women to study on the MSc in cyber. And that program is just sort of coming to an end now, but that's been really, really exciting to work with those young women, and get them joining in with the network activities and coming to conferences and things. So that's been really good.
That's fantastic. And it's so interesting, again, for me when I'm interviewing people and chatting to people in the industry, how many great initiatives there are out there for people to either break into the industry or to career change and jump into cyber. There's so much support and different initiatives out there. I was chatting with Rob Black yesterday, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and we were talking about the winners of the UK Cyber Leaders Challenge. And again, that's another one that's a great way for youngsters to get into the industry. And yeah, it's just inspiring listening to it all, and it's fantastic to hear. So it's yeah, it's really hopeful for the
Yeah,
future.
it is hopeful. Yeah, there's loads of initiatives going on, and that's one of the things I've really noticed when I've been running the network is, initially there was nothing else really much in the UK at all for women. Excuse me, there might have been pockets of things, but I wasn't aware of them. And then, now you've got lots more initiatives, because you've got WeSys UK, which is that sort of global network, which now has much more of a presence in the UK. You've got Cyber Women, the universities, which is another brilliant initiative. And then you've got all the little pockets of training, like you're talking like the cyber leaders and caps lock training, and SANS did some training, and so there's loads more going on, I think, and a lot more awareness of the need to encourage people into the sector.
Claire, it's been a wonderful conversation this morning. It's really been a great way to end my week. I feel inspired, and thank you. Thank you for taking the time out. I always like to end my episodes with our guests on the same question, and that question is, if you could have one superpower to help you in your role, what would that be and why?
Yeah, I thought, oh gosh, that's such a hard question, but I decided in the end to plump for that I think I'd like to be able to have a time machine, and that's not to go back and do things again. It's so that I can expand time, because I'm often like sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is a really good video. I'd like to watch this." Oh, but it's like 45 minutes long, and I haven't got 45 minutes, so I end up watching it on high speed, or I miss bits out or whatever. And I do so love learning that I would love to have enough time to just sit there and do all the try hack me challenges. I don't want to do just a small handful of the relevant ones. So yeah, a time machine I think is what I'd like.
I like that one. We've not had that before. So, yeah, very,
Okay.
very nice one. Thank you so much for chatting with me this morning.
Thank you
If
for having
you in
me.
the audience have enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to our channel, follow us on our socials. Thank you so much again, Claire, and we'll catch you next time.